Good afternoon. I would like to thank the Japan chapter of the Global Peace Foundation for this opportunity to speak. I wish I could be in Japan to participate in person. Most importantly, I am gratified to see so many people from the international community and civil society who are interested in Korean peace and security. We all must work together to help the 25 million oppressed people in the northern half of Korea to free themselves and reunite with their families in the South to solve the Korea question by achieving a free and unified Korea. And at the same time, to help the abductees from Japan to be able to return home to their families. And we should be frank and recognize that the northern half of Korea has been ruled for 7 decades by a mafia-like crime family cult known as the Kim family regime. In the height of hypocrisy, the regime took the name of Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It is neither a democracy nor a republic, and the nation certainly does not belong to the people. It should be known by the more accurate description of the guerrilla dynasty and gulag state. And really, the northern half of Korea is like a prison state, an entire gulag. I want to discuss 2 important topics: why Korea is important to the international community, and how civil society can contribute to achieving a free and unified Korea. South Korea, Japan, and the United States have one overarching concern. That is to prevent war on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia. The militaries of all 3 countries must be able to deter an attack by North Korea and defend all 3 countries should Kim Jong-un decide to attack. However, this important foundation provides the opportunity to execute a superior strategy to counter North Korea. And recently, a working group that I participated in published a new paper, A National Strategy for Countering North Korea, at the National Institute of Public Policy. And I am going to explain in my remarks will stem much from that paper. The conventional wisdom has long been that we should achieve denuclearization of the North and then unification of the Korean Peninsula. The new proposal seeks to reverse this and achieve unification first, and then we will be able to achieve denuclearization. And this strategy consists of 3 major lines of effort, resting on the foundation of deterrence and defense. First is a human rights upfront approach. Second is a sophisticated information and influence activities campaign. And the third line of effort is the pursuit of a free and unified Korea. Now, it is obvious that North Korea and Kim Jong-un pose an existential threat to the Republic of Korea and a significant threat to Japan. It has the 4th largest army in the world, with the full range of weapons of mass destruction and missiles that can range the entire peninsula, as well as Japan, Guam, Hawaii, and the homeland of the United States. Its military is offensively postured to attack the South. And there should be no doubt that Kim seeks to dominate the entire peninsula and is employing a political warfare and blackmail diplomacy strategy to do so. Most worrisome, Kim is developing advanced warfighting capabilities to use force when he deems the conditions are right. Although many fear the costs of unification, it is not difficult to imagine what a free and unified Korea can contribute to the international community, economically, culturally, diplomatically, and militarily. A unified Korea can make twice as many contributions as the Republic of Korea. While the threats are not something we want to imagine, the international community must prepare for them. At the same time, it must plan for opportunities that will arise in the future. While preparing for the worst, we must plan for the best, and the best is a free and unified Korea. And those opportunities require a strong foundation of preparation. So the question is, how should the international community contribute to the pursuit of a free and unified Korea and prepare for future opportunities? First, it is necessary to understand there are 5 major events and actions that must be considered. To reiterate, the first is war, which the ROK-US alliance and the Japan-US alliance must deter. And if deterrence fails, the ROK-US alliance, the ROK-US Combined Forces Command, will fight and win. The second is regime collapse, the collapse of the Kim family regime. However, this instability that leads to collapse could result in a decision by Kim Jong-un to go to war as a last effort to try to ensure regime survival. Collapse will likely bring internal conflict inside North Korea and a scale of human suffering far beyond the arduous march of the famine of 1994 to 1996. The third is human rights, the human rights situation in the North, which is on a scale far worse than anything we have seen since World War II. In addition to being a moral imperative, human rights are a national security issue. Kim must deny human rights in order to remain in power. The fourth is the wide range of asymmetrical threats posed by the regime, to include its global illicit activities, which take resources from unsuspecting and helpless countries, as well as those who should not be helpless, to include the United States, South Korea, and Japan. It is counterfeiting money, counterfeiting medicines. It is trafficking in drugs such as methamphetamines. It is laundering money. It is using overseas slave labor. And all of these contribute to supporting the regime. And most dangerous of all of these illicit activities is the regime's cyber activities. And it is conducting cyber warfare throughout the world, both to cause problems for the alliance, for other countries, as well as to gain resources, financial resources, through cyber attacks. The last of the 5 major events and actions is unification. And this is, of course, the biggest challenge, but it is also the solution to security on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia. Pundits, the press, and politicians often discount and diminish the prospects for unification and say that it is no longer a viable pursuit. However, since 2009, South Korea and US presidents have been making unification a central part of policies in joint statements. The ROK and US governments support unification as a policy objective, even though it is rarely discussed outside of those joint statements that come every 2 to 3 years. Thinking about unification, though, leads to strategic planning paralysis because it is so daunting and complex. Yet, if we think about it, there are really only 4 paths to unification. The first is the peaceful path. This is what we all desire. This is the most difficult to achieve, though, because Kim Jong-un will not go quietly into the night. Yet peaceful unification planning provides the most comprehensive preparation. It is the morally right path to pursue. And from a practical perspective, everything that is done for peaceful planning will have application in every other path. The second path is war. Obviously, war must be deterred because the amount of blood and treasure expended will be huge, and the impact on the international community will be significant. However, if this does occur, the planning for peaceful unification will be applied in post-conflict conditions. The third path is internal instability and regime collapse. This is also very dangerous because the conditions that lead to regime collapse could lead to Kim Jong-un's decision to go to war. Even if he does not issue the order to go to war, there will likely be a significant amount of conflict in the North and a huge amount of humanitarian suffering. Yet, in a post-collapse scenario, all peaceful unification planning will have application. And finally, there is this outlier. In this scenario, change occurs from within, and new leadership emerges in the North. If properly influenced with outside information, this new leader could pursue peaceful unification as the only way to ensure survival of the 25 million Korean people in the North. More so than the other scenarios, peaceful unification planning will be fully incorporated into achieving a free and unified Korea in this path. So what is the strategy that the Republic of Korea, the US alliance, the ROK-US alliance, and the international community must pursue to bring peace and security to the Korean Peninsula? Again, the ROK-US alliance and the Japan-US alliance must sustain a foundation of deterrence and defense and prevent North Korea from attacking the South and throughout the region. The priority is to maintain the armistice agreement to prevent a resumption of hostilities until positive change can occur within the North. And the ROK-US alliance, with support from Japan, must execute a superior political warfare strategy. This is the achievement of strategic objectives through the employment of all elements of national power short of war. This includes three critical elements of a new strategy. And to reiterate, a human rights upfront approach, a sophisticated information and influence activities campaign, and the pursuit of a free and unified Korea through peaceful means. Understanding the threat, opportunities, and the possible paths to unification, the logical question is, how can civil society help? First, civil society can advocate for unification. Members of civil society should recognize and publicize the benefits of unification, peace, and prosperity, to include the opportunities for investment and the contributions of a unified Korea to the global economy and to diplomacy and security. Civil society members should advocate for support from their governments for unification. Civil society should support non-governmental organizations that support assistance to Koreans from the North while they are in the North, as they escape and make their way to freedom, and then in the countries where they end up residing. Religious leaders can provide faith alternatives for the Korean people in the North. When the failure of the Juche ideology is exposed, the Korean people in the North will need hope to fill the void from exposing the lies of the Kim family regime. And most importantly, civil society can support a sophisticated influence campaign that targets the Korean people in the North. Exposure to your culture, to civil society cultures throughout the region and throughout the world, will provide inspiration to the Korean people in the North while bringing them an understanding of the outside world. What can an effective influence campaign do? Most importantly, it will support deterrence and defense by demonstrating the alliance is operating from a position of strength. There are three specific outcomes to strive for. First, an influence campaign seeks to change Kim Jong-un's behavior. Second, the elite and military leadership may force Kim to change his decision-making. And lastly, an influence campaign could cause the people to effect change on their own. Although dangerous, it is what will eventually cause the necessary change to end the regime's threats and human rights abuses, and will lead to a solution to the Korea question, which is found in paragraph 60 of the armistice, which is the unnatural division of the Korean Peninsula. The military commanders who signed the armistice knew that force could not bring peace to the peninsula. It must be solved politically. And in paragraph 60 of the armistice, it called on all parties to come together within 90 days to solve the Korea question, the political question of the unnatural division of the peninsula. And this is what we should strive for. Now, civil society can contribute to an influence campaign. While the ROC-US alliance, the Japan-US alliance, and others execute a superior political warfare strategy that consists of those three lines of effort. Again, a human rights upfront approach, an influence activities campaign, and the pursuit of a free and unified Korea. Civil society can provide a laser focus on human rights and raise awareness around the world to the benefits of unification. The following are the highlights of what should be included as part of an overt influence campaign. First is, there must be an overarching narrative. And every time it is necessary to respond to Kim Jong-un's nuclear and missile activities, the alliance and the international community must include a human rights response. For example, Kim Jong-un's deliberate decision to prioritize nuclear and missile developments is solely responsible for the suffering of the Korean people. In fact, the regime has spent more than $170 million on missile tests in 2022. That money could have been used for the welfare of the Korean people in the North. So it is Kim Jong-un who is responsible for the suffering of the Korean people. We should also establish an Escapee Information Institute to harness the expertise of key commentators from the North to shape themes and messages and advise on all aspects of an influence campaign. These key communicators from the North can influence the Korean people in the North with the truth and with their experiences, and serve as a shining example of how Korean people from the North can survive not only in South Korea, but around the world. Lastly, it should employ an overt influence campaign targeting the Korean people based on information, knowledge, truth, and understanding. First is information. We need to transmit massive quantities of information into the North, from entertainment, Korean dramas, cultural dramas from countries around the world, to news of what is happening on the Korean Peninsula, inside North Korea, in the region, and around the world. The second is knowledge. We need to transmit practical knowledge on how to affect change inside North Korea. We can provide best practices for agriculture and for market activity, and of course, educational lessons for children without Juche influence. The third is truth. The truth about the regime and the situation in North Korea and the outside world. And lastly is understanding. We must help the Korean people in the North to understand the inalienable and universal human rights that belong to all human beings on this earth. It must be made clear to the world that the only way we will see an end to the nuclear program and the military threats, as well as the human rights abuses, is through unification. This requires the establishment of a free and unified Korea that is secure and stable, non-nuclear, economically vibrant, and unified under a liberal constitutional form of government based on individual liberty, rule of law, and human rights as determined by the Korean people. In short, this is a united Republic of Korea. U-R-O-K or U-ROC. Ultimately, the Korea question, which is the unnatural division of the Korean Peninsula, will be solved by the Korean people. But we, as members of the civil society and the international community, can and must provide to Koreans as they achieve their long sought goal of a free and unified Korea and to live the Korean dream. Thank you very much, and I look forward to taking your questions.
では質問になります。北朝鮮の政権が変化するとき、転換期正義、Transitional Justice の法的確立が重要だと思いますが、国際的介入が可能でしょうかという質問になります。
That is a great question, and transitional justice will be an important step in bringing about unification and really resolving the differences between North and South Korea. Certainly, the international community can play a very strong supporting role. And really, we have seen since 2014 and the Commission of Inquiry a large amount of evidence of the human rights abuses that are taking place inside North Korea. And this evidence will be key to transitional justice. And I think that the international community can support the unified Korea in executing transitional justice in a fair way that will bring peace, security, and closure to the long division of the Korean Peninsula.
では、また次の質問に移ります。次の質問です。安易に統一を推し進めると、統一コリアがどちらかといえば北朝鮮よりの自由と人権を尊重する度合いの低い国家になる危険性はないのでしょうか。また、そうならないために何をするべきでしょうかという質問になります。
Well, I think when unification occurs, it will be a united Republic of Korea. And one of the important points is that the Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States all share the same values of freedom and individual liberty, the rule of law, and human rights. And when the unification process takes place, those values are going to be spread throughout all of Korea. And so a unified Korean government will be aligned with the values of our three countries and really democratically aligned nations around the world. And so I don't foresee that the values of North Korea will have any kind of influence over a unified Korea. It will be a free and unified Korea.
では次の質問ですね。5つ目の質問になります。具体的なシナリオとして、どのような方法、経緯で平和的な統一が達成されると考えておられるのか、伺いたいという質問になります。
Yes, that's a great question. And I think that what we would like to see happen is internal change inside North Korea. As South Korea plans for peaceful unification, it will require the integration of the two economies, the two militaries, the two cultures, the two political systems. And those processes will apply whatever path leads to unification, whether there is war, regime collapse, or internal change inside North Korea that seeks peaceful unification. That is really the ideal process to achieve unification, in that new emerging leadership inside North Korea seeks peaceful unification. And South Korea must have the complete plans for integration of North and South to achieve a free and unified Korea.
それではですね、次の質問になります。北朝鮮の周辺国家にとって、北朝鮮の核は分かりやすい脅威ですが、核問題を解決してから統一を実現するのが難しいと考える理由を教えてくださいと いう質問になります。
Well, I don't think that we can solve the nuclear issue as long as Kim Jong-un and the Kim family regime remain in power. And this is really the essence of our new strategy to counter North Korea. We recognize that Kim Jong-un will not give up his nuclear weapons. And that is why we must focus on first achieving a free and unified Korea. And a united Republic of Korea will then have no need for nuclear weapons. And a united Republic of Korea will be able to secure the North's nuclear weapons and turn them over to be rendered safe, and so that there will be no longer any nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula.
はい、では、次の質問に移ります。これは英語でのですね、英文での質問でした。So the question is, what are the sentiment among young South Koreans regarding the history of divided Korea post World War II? Do they feel strong about the needs for unification for better society of Korea as a whole?
That is a very good question. And we are seeing surveys that come from South Korea where the young people have less interest, a declining interest in unification. The long division has really led to separating the two sides. And many of the young people are happy with their lives. And many people in Korea, of course, fear the enormous cost of unification. However, I think it is important to understand that in many of the scenarios, there will be no way to prevent unification. If there is war, or if there is regime collapse, or if a new leader in North Korea seeks peaceful unification, unification really cannot be prevented. And I think that the young people and all the Korean people will, in the end, support unification because it will bring peace and security and prosperity to the Korean Peninsula.
では、また次の質問になります。現在、北朝鮮の住民たちは、外の世界の情報が全く入らないか、情報がかなり制限された状況にあります。もっと多くの情報が北朝鮮の住民、あるいは政権幹部に伝わるためには、どのような動きが必要でしょうかという質問になります。
Another great question. Thank you. We need to use all available means of transmission to get information inside North Korea. The United States broadcasts Voice of America, Radio Free Asia. Other countries, and of course, South Korea, transmit information into North Korea through various means. Many of the escapee or defectors use balloons to transmit information. There is also a widespread cell phone infrastructure inside North Korea. And there is also the cross-border communications via cell phone and face-to-face, in-person communications. Every means of transmission should be used to bring information to the Korean people in the North. Yes, there is an internal cell phone structure with 7.5 million smartphones inside North Korea. It is internal to North Korea, but it is a large cell phone network that is used to transmit information. Indirectly, they talk to people on the Chinese border, and on the Chinese border, they can communicate with Koreans who have Chinese cell phones inside North Korea. And so there's an indirect method of communication from South Korea to China into North Korea, and then throughout the internal cell phone network, information can be conveyed. Let me just add that one of the things that are really that the Korean people in the North really like are the dramas from South Korea. And these are often passed on thumb drives or flash drives and played on Chinese video players inside North Korea. So the K-dramas are really well received inside North Korea, and they are passed around among the people to watch about information about the outside world in South Korea.
では、また次の質問になります。脱北者情報研究所に関してですが、すでに設立に向けて進んでいるのでしょうか。設立する上で難しいことなど、現在の状況を知りたいですという質問になります。
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think any of the governments are establishing one. We would like South Korea and the United States to do that. But informally, within civil society, we are using defectors' expertise to help us understand what is happening inside North Korea. I think that to establish one will really take government support in Korea or the United States to really harness the power of those defectors to be able to influence the inside North Korea. So we need support to be able to establish one.
では、また次の質問に移ります。はい。韓国で、生じている平和統一に向けた世論を、国際的な世論として広げるために必要なことは何でしょうかという、質問になります。
Well, what is needed are all of the people like you and me. We need to talk about unification. We need to write about it. We need to advocate for it. And all of us outside of Korea can show our support for unification, which I think will increase the confidence of the Korean people in the South to work towards unification. So it is really up to all of us to really support unification. And of course, GPF is one of the leading organizations. It is the leading organization that seeks unification of Korea. And so all of us play a role in supporting that.
でそれでは、次の質問になります。今、来ている質問等もありますので、そちらも含めて、事前の質問も含めてですね、質問させていただきます。はい。では、次の質問は、東アジアの共生共栄の道筋を、筋道を聞きたいですという質問になります。
Well, I think that there will not be coexistence and co-prosperity until there is a free and unified Korea. North Korea will always be a threat to security and prosperity because it seeks to dominate the Korean peninsula and it continues to develop weapons that threaten not only South Korea, but Japan, the region, and even the United States. So the path to co-prosperity and coexistence is really, it really must go through the free and unified Korea. Once a free and unified Korea is established, then we can have coexistence and co-prosperity in the region, in East Asia.
では、また次の質問になります。これも、これまでのことと少し通じる部分はあるんですが、南北朝鮮半島の統一へのロードマップの施策、青写真があればお教えくださいという質問になります。
Well, I have laid out the four paths: peaceful unification, war, regime collapse, and internal change inside North Korea. Those are the four paths to unification. A blueprint for unification really needs to come from South Korea's Ministry of Unification. And they are about to release a new unification plan in the coming months. And a peaceful unification plan requires the integration of the two economies, two political systems, two militaries, and two cultures. And so that is the broad framework. But South Korea really needs to develop the actual blueprint and details for unification.
では、次の質問になります。一市民が、ちょっと漠然とした質問かもしれませんが、一市民が、何ができるのかという、質問になります。
Well, that is great. Yes, we all can do something. First, all of us can contribute to the work that GPF does. I think we can all use our voices to advocate for unification, whether it is your voice or whether you can write about it. We all need to support the unification process and the goal of unification as the way to peaceful coexistence in East Asia.
では、次の質問になります。少し、長めの、質問になります。So it's a bit long question. 自由と民主主義、そして、人権を持つ統一コリアが実現することに、一番危惧するのは中国ではないのか。なぜなら、NATO のような、軍事同盟が、米国、日本、韓国同盟、日韓米同盟が、中国との国境沿いに出現するようになるので、彼らは必死になって中国よりの統一コリアを望むはずである。新たな冷戦が始まっている米国と中国が大きな鍵を持っているのではないかという質問になります。
Yeah, that is a great question as well. Certainly, China does not want to have U.S. forces on its border. And so a unified Korea with the presence of U.S. forces will be challenged by China. And China will do everything in its power to influence a united Republic of Korea to send U.S. troops home. And so China will try to dominate the Korean Peninsula, to use its influence to bring Korea into its sphere of influence. And this is really what we see today in strategic competition, competition between China and the United States, and really between authoritarian governments, dictators, and democratic countries, free countries. This is really the new Cold War, which is not the same as the one that took place after World War II. But this competition between China and the US will be played out on the Korean Peninsula. But the decision for US troops to remain in Korea will be made by the Korean government and the US government. China does not have a veto of the security agreements that Korea and the United States or Japan and the United States make. Yes, against the security arrangements that South Korea and the US decide, and the security arrangements of Japan and the US. Those are made between the governments, and China cannot veto, cannot say no to those security arrangements. It can protest, it can show its displeasure, but we do not make our security agreements based on what China wants. We do what's best for our national interests.
では、次の質問です。あと時間少しですけれども、来ている質問にお答えいただければと思います。はい、中国が、朝鮮半島の統一を支援するようになるためには、 どのような条件が必要だと考えますかという質問になります。
I don't think China will necessarily support unification. China will try to influence or to have its influence over Korean unification. One of the things that China has been doing to prepare for unification is to make agreements with North Korea on mineral extraction in North Korea. They have made 50-year and 100-year lease agreements of mines and mineral deposits in North Korea. And I believe it is their intention to use those type of agreements to exert influence over a unified Korea. And so that a unified Korea will have to honor those lease agreements so that China will be able to extract minerals from Korea to use for its economic benefit. So China will not totally support unification, but I don't believe that they will prevent it because I see them taking actions now to be able to live with a unified Korea.
では、また次の質問になります。主体思想の問題点と、その思想からの解放策があれば教えてくださいという質問になります。
Yes, well, the Juche ideology, which is often expressed as self-reliance, is really all about keeping Kim Jong-un or the Kim family regime in power. The ideology is really meant as a mechanism to control the population, and combined with the Songbun system, and Songbun is the social classification system. Juche and Songbun really are responsible for oppressing the Korean people in the north, to control them and to prevent any kind of resistance to the Kim family regime. It is important to remember that Kim Jong-un is more afraid of the Korean people in the north than he is afraid of the US military. And Juche and Songbun are necessary for Kim Jong-un to remain in power.
ではですね、次の質問です。少し8時半は過ぎてしまうんですが、あと2つですね、会場の皆様から質問いただいてますので、この2つまでお答えいただければと思います。So the last two questions. The first one is, 統一後も、在韓米軍は引き続き駐留すべきだと思いますが、UN 軍は統一されれば、解散されるのでしょうかという、質問になります。
Yes, well, as I said, the decision for US troops to remain in Korea will be one made by the Korean government and the US government. There is a mutual defense treaty, which provides the basis for stationing of US troops there. But both governments have to agree that US troops should remain. Now, the United Nations Command is in a different category because it exists because of the UN Security Council resolutions of 1950, which called on member nations to defend South Korea's freedom, and it established the United Nations Command. So we don't know what will happen to the United Nations Command, but it is logical that after unification, there will be no more mission for the United Nations Command. It will not be needed to maintain the armistice, which it currently does, and it will not be needed for the defense of South Korea and the employment of other nations' forces in the defense of South Korea as occurred in 1950 to 1953.
最後の質問というふうに申し上げたんですが、残りの質問は、ですね、ちょっと訂正で、マックスウェルさんに、メールでですね、私が聞いて、それで皆さんに、またメールでですね、お送りできればと思います。で、ですね、あと8時半過ぎましたので、これにて、終わりとさせていただきたいと思います。デイビッドさんは、今日は、朝の、5時ということで、こちらからも非常に時差もありますので、非常に早い時間にですね、今日のセッションのためにご参加をいただきました。何かデイビッドさんの方から皆さんにメッセージというかですね、あれば、最後にちょっといただければと思いますけれども。
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's not too early to talk about this important subject. And so I am happy to support GPF Japan. And so thank you for having me. My message is that we all must work together for a free and unified Korea. And really, the basis for a free and unified Korea really resides in Dr. Moon's Korea dream. And I think if we understand the Korea dream and we try to live by the Korea dream, that we can support the achievement of a free and unified Korea. So I thank you for having me, and I wish everybody all the best. Thank you.
では、今日はご参加いただきまして、ありがとうございました。So thank you very much for attending the speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. ありがとうございました。では、失礼いたします。